to have you all here. We do want to just start out with a land acknowledgement today. So as we gather here today, we honor and acknowledge that we are on the traditional territories and ancestral homelands of the Cheyenne and Arapaho nations. This area was also the site of trade, hunting, gathering, and healing for many Native nations: the Utes, Lakota, Kiowa, Comanche, Apache, Shoshone, and many other Native nations. We recognize the indigenous peoples are as the original stewards of the land and all the relatives within, the animal nations, plant nations, insect nations, and stone nation. As these words of acknowledgement are spoken and heard, the ties these nations have to their traditional homelands are renewed and reaffirmed. Let us acknowledge also the painful history of genocide and forced removal from this territory. We respect the many diverse indigenous peoples still connected to this land on which we gather. We pay our respect to them and give thanks to all the tribal nations and the ancestors of this place. And that was given to us by, many of you know, Gracie Redshirt Tyon of American Indian Student Services. So we did just want to do that. Even a lot of us are still in the Denver area, so it is this is very prevalent to us. So I do want to let you all know, you all might see it already in the corner of the screen. This is going to be a recorded event, but the only part that will be recorded is the moment where our guest speaker is speaking. And then when we get to questions and answers, we will turn off the recording so that you all can be a little bit more engaging and open up a bit more without fearing that it's going to be recorded for everyone to see. So I do want to let you all know that at some point we will stop the recording. So if you all want to share and get more deep and intimate, you can. To piggyback off of that, if at any point during this event you do have any questions, please go ahead and privately message them to Aja if you don't want to like say it out loud or forget them. Aja, yes, she's waving. So Aja Mejia, if you don't know her last name, so go ahead and email, just privately chat those to her. During the presentation, feel free to use any reactions. If something is really resonates with you or something that you agree with, feel free to use the reactions. We definitely want more of an engagement piece for this. So before we do get started and before I introduce our guests, I do want to take a moment to reflect on like how you all are feeling right now. What's on your mind? What's the most salient thing? This is a gathering, and so we do want to know how you're doing and how you are feeling like a community would. So we just want you to take a moment to reflect. Please utilize the chat to reflect as well, and to really interact with each other on how you're feeling. Feel free to bring your whole self with you today to this presentation. Don't feel like you have to have it all together right now. I definitely don't. So yeah, definitely don't feel like you have to have it all together. And we just want to leave this event with richness inside of us. And so leaving this event more empowered than when we came in. The last little thing I want to say is if you have any resources that you think would be helpful to individuals right now, please also put that in the chat. Send it privately to myself or Aja, and we can help with that. But yeah, I'm just going to give you all a moment to reflect. Go ahead and utilize the chat on how you are feeling right now. Awesome. So keep going and putting in your reflections. Something I do want us to go over before we get the event started is our community guidelines. So I'm gonna go ahead and put these in the chat as well so that we do have them. So the spaced out, what I put is our community guidelines. So the first one is this is a safe and brave space. So please understand that everyone is welcome here. Everyone is allowed to share their opinions. This is a judgment-free zone. What is talked about here stays here, but what is learned here leaves here. So please don't go and sharing other people's business, but please always take the message and the moral of this event with you after you leave here. That's what we're really hoping. Respect one another and what is said. Manage the space you take up. I know that I can be really talkative, and so I do have to manage how much space I'm taking up in certain events and how many times I'm trying to give my input. So please do the same for yourselves. Allow for mistakes and forgiveness. Be in this moment, which I know is really hard, but as much as you can try, just be in this moment with us here all together, and also take care of your needs. So if that means that you have to walk away for a second, that you need to turn off your camera, whatever that might mean, please do that. We do want you to feel safe and validated. And like we said, this is a crazy time right now. So please take care of yourself. And so with that, I want to introduce our guest, who is Farzana Nayani. So she is a oh my goodness, speaking is hard. I'm so glad it's the weekend, y'all. You have no idea. My language has just not been good. So let me start that over. So Farzana is a passionate advocate and educator, and is a frequently requested speaker and coach on diversity, equity, and inclusion. She does race, unconscious bias, leadership, culture, and identity during these trainings. She serves on the board of advisors for Multiracial Americans of Southern California, which is a nonprofit that has supported multiracial individuals and families for over 30 years. She is now based in LA and has been featured on Forbes, NPR, and Diversity Inc. for her expertise. She is Filipina and Pakistani, and she recently released a book called Raising Multiracial Children, Tools for Nurturing Identity in a Racialized World. So if you all could please help me welcome Farzana. You can clap, you can do your little reaction snaps. I usually like to do.
Yay. Hey, everyone. Thanks so much. It's so wonderful to be here. Appreciate the introduction, Alma, and for the CII team that put this together. Really want to acknowledge you and thank everyone for inviting me to be here today. This is such an important topic that I've been asked to speak about, maintaining power in a time of uncertainty. And for everyone who just shared how they're feeling and other folks who are reflective right now, I'm right there with you. I think the idea of it being, roller coaster waves and an uncertain time is really present for me and for so many of us. And so today we're really going to look at how to navigate through that and maintain power. And as we go through, if you have any questions, feel free to share them in the chat, and I will peek at them. And Alma, if you could keep an eye on the chat while I'm talking, and feel free to unmute yourself and chime in, that would be great. Also, when I look at something in the chat, I won't say your name, so feel free to be open in the chat as we're recording. So just to kind of let you know that I won't repeat your name if you have a question or something comes up. Okay, so let's begin. So some of my background was already shared in that I'm a speaker, consultant, coach, and an author of this new book called Raising Multiracial Children, Tools for Nurturing Identity in a Racialized World. I'm also a parent. As you can see here, I have two children. They're 7 and 9. My partner is Malaysian and German, so I come from a multi-ethnic background and also am a parent of multiracial children myself. I do speak to a lot of different groups, and what I found is that during this time, this connection that we are fostering through virtual communication is so needed. We may not be there in person, but we can be still connected. So we may be distant, but we're not disconnected. So bringing that spirit to our conversation today, I really want to tap into a lot of things that we're going to be looking at in terms of our discussion. So today will be an interactive, reflective, conversational session. We'll be able to talk about a number of different things. The first thing we'll be looking at is the impact of this transition and change overall, which we're experiencing not only in our personal lives, but in our work and everything that we're experiencing out in the world. We'll also look at the relationship with the planet and how we can carve out our future. So what are some things that have surfaced for right now that we can take forward with us? Connections to being a person of color and specifically ancestral past and trauma. So we have things that can be surfaced for us as we're experiencing this transition and change that really harken to our identities. And it's important to be grounded in knowing that that is going on. We'll be able to take a look at that today. We'll be tapping into our feelings regarding this current global state, as well as turn that into how we can develop strategies for healing and overall support. So we want to leave on a note of resourcing and an approach to move forward that is a healthy, balanced way that we can incorporate into our daily lives. So that's the overview for today. And if you have any questions, feel free again to ask at any point. All right. So let's begin with a recap of what's going on in our current times. As you all are well aware, we're in a global pandemic. And it's important to note that this is global. It's not just in our neighborhoods, but it's affecting the entire country. It's affecting the entire world. And in a strange way, it's uniting us, but it's also dividing us because of what we're seeing in terms of the reactions to the pandemic and in terms of how resources are being distributed and accessed. We are feeling the impact of health and economic distress. We are seeing major changes, cancellations of things that are really dear to us, for example, graduations or our semesters in person, or for me, I had a lot of in-person events canceled. So we're really losing that in-person contact that we're used to on a daily basis. And that is also through self-isolation. So as we're being asked to maintain a safer at-home dynamic, we are self-isolating. And that is causing us to need to reach out in different ways and to find ways to fulfill needs that aren't able to be fulfilled in the same way in terms of social contact and connection. And overall, it's just a time of uncertainty, right? We don't know when this will be lifted. We don't know when we'll recover. We don't know when different resources will be shared. There's so many question marks here. And when we think about these current times, it's important to acknowledge that we're in these times. It's not just us individually and how we can manage our reactions to it or our individual experiences, but this is a global, quite visceral experience that we're all feeling. So feel free to chime in with any reactions you have in addition to what I've shared that's affecting you. So what else is affecting you as we're looking at the current times? Feel free to share. At the same time this is all going on, we can find strength and a core practice of a number of different things around wellness. And one is to just breathe. So today, at this moment, I would like to invite us to have a moment to breathe together. And I can lead this right now. So if you are able to get in a comfortable position where you have nothing in your hands, and just be aware of your posture. You could be lying down or sitting, and just start to soften your gaze. Perhaps you'll close your eyes, or you can keep them open, whatever's safe and available to you. And just start to notice your breathing. Start to be aware of where the breath is coming from, the pace of it. And be aware of the parts of your body that need a little more attention and care right now, and breathe into those parts. Just send some loving energy and breath in those directions. At the same time, breath is very cleansing, and so we can use it also to help release things that are no longer serving us. So let's begin with that. So let's take a big deep breath in. and let it out. Another big deep breath in. Fill it up more. And just let some stuff out. And another big deep breath in and hold it up at the top. And let it out. And just move your body in a way that feels right to you. Sense of movement throughout your core and your fingers and your toes and your entire body, whatever needs a little bit of movement. And we'll come back. Thank you. I definitely feel more grounded. So thanks for participating in that with me. I hope that was beneficial for you. I feel a lot clearer now. And this picture, isn't it beautiful? Just look at it. It's just very inspiring. Okay. So as we continue, I want to tap into an extension of how you're feeling and start to begin to reflect on how this is impacting you. And at this time, I invite you to find something to write with. It could be your phone typing in the notes, or it could be a pen and paper, whatever you have handy. And just set it up so you have kind of two areas. And what you're going to reflect on are these two things. Firstly, a list of things, so you can jot a few things down. What have you lost during this time? Okay, so what has been lost for you? What have you lost during this time? Take a moment to reflect. You can just write a few words, ideas, reactions, bullet points on what have you lost during this time? What have you lost? And feel free to use the chat if you wish to share that, if you feel comfortable. On the other side, we're going to look at what have you gained? What have you gained during this time? And I'm not going to rush you. You can take a moment now. I'm just letting you know that the two areas that we're focusing on. So take some more time on what have you lost as well, if you need it. And then when you're ready, you can move to what have you gained. So thinking about what you have lost, it could be something tangible. It could be something intangible, right? It could be something that's connected to you. It could be something that is something you've witnessed. Just another moment to consider what have you lost during this time. Could be, a number of different things. I don't want to influence your brainstorming, but it could be, you've lost your freedom, or maybe you've lost a job, maybe you've lost a loved one. What have you lost? Have you lost your normal routine? Did that get dropped in all of this? Have you lost your sense of direction? What have you lost? So just a few final thoughts there. I see some notes coming in the chat around some personal reflections here. We can see we've lost, exercise, where you go to ground, lost parents, lost motivation, routine, freedom, just being able to go out and drive. Yeah, those freedoms that we've lost in this can come in those small ways that we used to not notice as much, like being able to get in the car and go somewhere, for sure. So let's look now at what have you gained? What have you gained in this moment? Have you gained more time? Have you gained more clarity? We have some folks writing in the chat that gained, eating healthier, cooking more, and saving money. Maybe there's some ability to do things like self-care now that you didn't have before. Gaining family bonding time, that was lost to commuting, right, because of this reorganization. Gaining patience, gaining the ability to rest rather than being on the go all the time. We also have here gaining more feelings and having the time to figure out the way that you feel. Gaining introspection, reflection, maybe more sleep, more time to yourself. We have that. Less stress, and not having to worry about being somewhere or having the money to be somewhere. This is all, real talk here. Look at the gaining, being able to connect more with siblings and self-awareness, and gaining the ability to be okay with not knowing what the future holds. This is so precious what you've shared here. And it shows a number of things here. It shows that in this time, we have both of those things going on, right? We have things that we've lost, and yet at the same time, we've gained these things. And when we look at how to translate that into the world, we won't do a reflection together on this, but it's something you can do on your own, where you can think about, what have we gained in this time as a community, as humanity? We've lost a lot of things. Those are present to us. We're being shown that in the news a lot, right? But what have we also gained? And so as we continue thinking about this, what I'd like to propose to you is to think about this duality. We have both of those things happening at the same time. We've got loss, we've got crisis, we've got pain, we've got sorrow. At the same time, we've got promise of opportunity, we've got inspiration, we've got the beautiful connection that comes from being with our families more, perhaps for you, if that's true. And what I'm showing you in this beautiful graphic is that we are holding all of that at the same time. We are literally underneath it all. And so the mind shift is around the fact that many times, and this is true for everybody, many times, sometimes we're in one part of the duality, one part of the thinking, and then we can, flip and then go into the other, or we might hang out in that other part for longer, like the despair, like the depression, for sure, but especially with what's going on. And this swinging it's sort of like unnerving, it's rattling, right? Because it's just continuing. If we think that, oh, I'm not sad, I used to be happy, or I used to be this, or I used to be that. But that's the thing of it all, is it's a natural occurrence to have both at the same time. So as we think about where we are, we don't need to commit to one or the other. Okay? Where we are, actually, the positionality of strength that I'd like to invite us and that I offer to you in terms of a perspective, is that we're underneath it all. We're holding it all. And with that, we can have perspective. With that, we can embrace the crisis and the opportunity. Okay? So I hope that can help in terms of shifting, the severity of each of these things, right? Because have you met people that are so super happy, and it's sort of like, this is shocking. Like, are you aware of what's going on in the world? Do you know people like that? Raise your hand if you know people like that. And then, do you know people like that? And this could be you. This is not making fun of anyone, but this could be you, where it's like, I'm constantly down. I'm constantly down. I can't see past this. And that, I have moments like that, right? That can happen pretty quick, and it could come and get you. So what can be very strengthening and empowering is to zoom out and see that that's all going on. The other thing that is important is to understand this in a larger context, that in recognizing our position, we have greater understanding, and this perspective is empowerment. So you can see in this image here, look how deep this insight is, right? If we just stopped at the first stage, we'd have one level of awareness. And the second one, we'd have that level of awareness. But if we kind of walk through it all, look how far this goes. we can have so much perspective that can be empowering here. And I'm going to give you some more examples. So we have here, in addition to the yin and yang, that's what the symbol is, the, you know, the positive and the negative, or the one side of the equation or the other. What I wanted to talk about here today is that as people of color, not only are we carrying the yin and yang, we're carrying the intersectionality of that yin and yang. We're carrying the multiplicity of that yin and yang. So check it out. It's not just black and white here. We've got patterns, we've got textures, we've got, you know, depth. And so when we experience this on top of everything else, on top of the narrative that we're receiving in the world, right? Change is happening very quickly. We're fully aware of that. Well, what does this mean for our families, right? What does this mean for example, if we have families spread out all over the country? What does this mean if we have people we need to think about because of their economic distress, because of generations of, you know, societal inequity, right? Like that layer is that's the texture that, you know, we want to get into thinking about the emotions around this, right? Not only are we already facing dominant culture when we walk into whatever environment we're in, but now this. And how do we feel about that? Is that overwhelming? Right? And some of you put in the chat, it is overwhelming, right? And then on top of that, if we look at what's surfacing in this pandemic, what's surfacing is the ills of society, even in a more pronounced way. So I'll give you an example. What is on the rise right now? There are a few things on the rise. Anti-Asian racism is on the rise. We've got people getting punched, kicked, spat on, barred from entry to places, businesses vandalized. I saw in the news last week, a family of 3 had a 2- and 6-year-old. They were stabbed and told that they were the cause of the virus because they're Asian. And just 3 days ago in Brooklyn, someone threw acid on a woman's face who was Chinese. So what, and so, you know, people before are like, well, Asians are the model minority. They don't have anything going on that we need to worry about. So in a strange twist of events, like there's irrefutable evidence of what's going on. Same thing for our African American and Latinx communities, who are disproportionately dying more than other communities. And don't give me that whole excuse around obesity or whatever they're trying to tell us. It's bias here. It's systemic oppression that has happened through food deserts, through lack of access to education, housing, healthcare, you know, trust of the system, because the system has let folks down. That's what's going on here. So it's not just, I'm not demeaning this, but it's not just people dying here, right? Like everyone's going through isolation. Everyone's going through people dying. Okay, and there's an and here with people of color. The additional burden, the additional things that we have to carry here. And so the bottom line is the experience is not the same for everyone. The experience is not the same. I was watching TV last night on a rare occasion when I thought, okay, I'm just going to turn on something fun. And everyone was, you know, doing a little, you know, it was an uplifting segment. I won't say what segment it is, but it was an uplifting segment where people were calling in from their homes and saying, hey, we're all in this together. Hey, you know, this is a challenging time. And I'm like, yeah, but look at your granite countertop and your beautiful home, right? And your, you know, wall to wall like art. And I'm like, that's a different kind of difficult time, right? Than the pictures I've seen of 1-bedroom apartments where kids don't even have a laptop to get to for their Zoom school, right? Like that polarity is what I'm talking about here. This experience is not the same for everyone. I find it insulting. I find it almost insulting when people come in and say, we're all going through this together. Like, no, no, we're not. We're not. I've seen, you know, you've seen media. I've seen media posts where people are like, it's not a big deal for a person of color to wear a mask. No one thinks of them as criminals. And I'm like, what planet are you on? Because that's not the case everywhere. Because there are people that, you know, as soon as you put that thing on, there's a whole different dynamic going on when you're masked and out in the public. Okay. So I'm sharing this as a way to honor that if you're feeling anything of what I've said, I want you to know that you are not alone and that's real. Okay? Don't let that go out of your head. You're living the truth and speaking the truth. Okay? And I see you and we see you. So if you're ever wondering or thinking or considering or you know unsure, I'm affirming what you're feeling. And on top of that, this is not always talked about. So we're talking about it today because again, it's an additional burden. So here's another one I wanted to show you. So notice the reactions. Have you heard this one? And you may say it. And again, this is a perspective. This too shall pass. So what will pass? What's passing here? Because we're seeing, again, like I said, inequity. We're seeing, right? We're seeing injustice. Is that really going to go away as soon as we're out the door? As soon as we're able to get back in our cars? I don't know. What are we talking about here? I'm curious. I know it's a way for us to get by, to get through. I get it. I get the intention, but just notice the reaction. So if you're feeling a reaction to this, I'm just letting you know that there's a reason probably why you're feeling a reaction. Because I'll tell you why. Because it's pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Hang in there, kid. That's why. Okay? And that's not the case for us. Some of this, what we're feeling right now, is going to be irreparable. Okay? I can't speak on behalf of all communities, but I know, for example, in the Asian community, we're not going back from how severe people think that Asians are responsible for this. It's disgusting. We're not going to go back from that. This is at the level, in my opinion, of the whole how Japanese folks were looked at during the war. In my opinion, that we're at that level of antagonism and perpetual foreigner viewpoints. It's going to take, in my opinion, at least a decade, maybe more, for us to recover from that kind of trauma and viewpoint. It's always, as soon as you say the word China, what do you think? As soon as you say the word that, wet market, whatever, it's a reaction. And the same thing is going to happen with these economic disparities. So to me, I feel like that's, now again, this is my opinion and feel free to disagree with me. But what I'm trying to say is that honor if you have a reaction like that. This is hard right now. So how we're looking at blame, like who's at fault here, it's a tough one, right? We're looking at politicians, we're looking at certain groups, and that those reactions are really, it's not even a mild reaction. Everything's a strong reaction right now. So notice that. The thing on the left I really wanted to share with you today is this concept of toxic positivity. Raise your hand if you've heard of this, because I just came across that this has a name, and I was very excited to understand this concept. So toxic positivity is the excessive and ineffective overgeneralization of a happy and optimistic state in any situation. And what this does is it creates a denial, minimization, and an invalidation of the genuine human emotional experience. So this is like, Aja, don't feel bad right now. You should be lucky you have your health. You know, you've got a place to live in, and we should just all be grateful. So buck up and use this time to create more art. Okay? How does that make you feel? It Go ahead.
It's very invalidating of my experience as well as other people who are struggling. That kind of oversimplification isn't useful because you're demeaning the person who you're talking to. You're saying, oh, well, yeah, you have this, but you should be grateful. You can't have that experience because you need to be grateful.
I felt that. Thank you for what you shared. And that's the thing is that I think when people just make a judgment in general about someone else's experience at any point, that is a flawed understanding. One person will never know what another person's shoes are like. There's no way. There's no way you can make any judgment on anyone, and that includes looking at privileged people. We don't know. We don't know what's going on for what we perceive. Like that comment I just made about people in big homes. Yeah, that's my reaction. But it's also like, that's unfair for me, and in the same respect, right? So know that what I'm trying to get at with the toxic positivity thing is, don't buy into the idea, and I put it on the end there, of this pressure for productivity right now. Don't buy into the fact that you need to be more productive because you have more time. People say this. They say just because you have more time doesn't mean you're available. You see the difference? Like, I'm not emotionally available. Yes, I'm at home. I'm kicking around. That doesn't mean I'm available to you. That doesn't mean I'm available to the world in 100% full form. I'm not 100 right now. Okay, I'm not. So for any expectation being put on ourselves, by ourselves, or from others, it's a difficult thing. And so this toxic positivity, this graphic is from Tang Lao Mental Health. It's a Filipino mental health clinic, and so there's that end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is focusing on a constant state of crisis, which is also unhealthy. So when we look at the news so much and are tracking, everything, I won't get into what we're tracking, but we're constantly being fed. It can really damage you emotionally and mentally. So the guidance is saying, just try to check your news source, your trusted news source, once a day, and just kind of, if you want to, just tap into the major points, and just don't keep drinking it in. If you keep drinking it in this constant state of crisis, you're going to feel that way. And like I was just saying, I was watching this show with my kids, and up until that point, they didn't even know anything was going on. They're like, oh, we can't go outside. Okay, but we get to do this. We get to do that. We get to make forts out of the sofa cushions. Like, they're actually happy. But when I turned the show on that was supposed to be, uplifting, I was like, oh man, they keep saying this is a challenging time. All the commercials are saying this is a difficult time. And I'm like, wow, like, this is putting us in a constant state of crisis. And my kids, I've been focusing on just keeping them like happy and reading and eating and, their needs, right? But this constant state of crisis, if we envelop ourselves in that, it can actually do physical damage. It can suppress your immune system, making you more vulnerable to a number of different things. So just to look at these reactions, it's disempowering overall. So I don't want to spend time on this, like, to focus on this. I'm doing this so there's awareness around it, so we can move into a state of empowerment. And that's where the shift in perspective can be. The shift in perspective is where there's promise here. The shift in perspective is where we gain back our power, where we gain self-power, because guess what? This is all normal. Okay? And I don't mean that in a facetious way that this global pandemic is normal, but the waves of up and down are normal. The waves of feeling good and not feeling good are normal. What has been fed to us is that we need to be positive all the time, and that's not true. That narrative is damaging, and especially in moments like this, where we need to remove judgment from how we feel and understand that in the natural cycle of life, and this comes back to being in alignment with the planet, the earth, that there is the new moon that's present, and then a waning of the moon, and then it becomes a full moon that's present, a waning of the moon, and then it becomes new again. We're not supposed to be on 100 the whole time. That is not the way of the tides. That's not the way of the seasons. That's not the way that we as people should operate either. So know that, and know that if we're in a certain part in this wave, the cycle, the roller coaster, as some of you mentioned, that this is part of the cycle. The loss, recovery, and growth is part of the cycle. The loss, recovery, and growth is part of how we continue. Forests burn naturally. And the thing is, I'm not saying, okay, the mass death is a normal thing. That's not what I'm saying here. Don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is that the cycle of life, the cycle of grief, the cycle of loss, the cycle of regaining, right? That's normal. I've got friends who are pregnant right now. I want to be happy for them. They should not have to feel guilty for having joy. I've seen people post about owning a new home. I've had 2 people who I mentee, they got new jobs in the last 2 weeks. There's a whole other side to this. So I want us to keep going. I want us to venture through this cycle knowing that we can get through it because we are built that way. We are built to get through cycles. We've just forgotten because that's what we've been taught, is to be, constantly productive. So I'm going to pause here and actually invite some reactions to this concept of the duality and also the perspective. So I'd love to hear some feedback, and I can see some stuff coming in the chat, and maybe we could have people come on audio too. So as we look at specific issues of being a person of color, and I love what was just brought up about ancestors, because this comes true in this next portion we're talking about. Again, I won't belabor this, but we can see systemic inequities and depression that are present. And on top of that, they're compounding, right? So we know there's health, economic disparities, access, all of those issues that are compounding. Now, in addition to that, there's intergenerational and ancestral trauma that is being resurfaced. So here's the thing, is that there's stuff that is in our lineages. There are things that are part of our ancestral past intergenerationally that we may not even know about, that could surface in a time of this pandemic. There are things that we could be discovering about ourselves that are painful. And so, I'm happy to share an example about an exploration I had around this, where I was just feeling really down. I was feeling down and in crisis. And I talked to someone who is, an intuitive healer. And she took a look at my ancestral past. And I realized I had trauma around the healthcare system, because my grandmother, who's Filipina, she had a number of kids, but what I didn't know is she had lost a few. And what we discovered was that was like a rupture in the trust of like the healthcare provider, right? So deep. So I call up my mom, and never knew this about it, but she had 4 extra siblings. That 2 were stillborn, and another couple they passed away when they were young. So there are 4 more aunts and uncles that I didn't know about. And in talking with her about it, there's been healing. We talked at length, and I didn't know that was there. It was just something we never talked about because it was so painful. So when those things come up, when those like powerful energetic pulses come through in the form of emotion, in the form of pain, that is actually information. we have been taught to suppress that. And instead, what I'm inviting us to do is explore it. Kind of like what was just shared around moving into that funk. Because that information is key here. It teaches you about boundaries. It teaches you about needs. It teaches you about communicating it or not, expression. And it could lead into this deeper exploration of ancestors and things that have been unresolved that, quite frankly, we have the power to heal right now. Did you know we can heal backwards and forwards in our lines? When we heal ourselves, we heal the whole line. And we also ensure this protective mechanism for the future. When we pay attention to the sanctity of ourselves, that has been lost, beaten out of us, taught, okay? And what has resulted is this fractured relationship that we have with a number of things that I want to share with the earth. First of all, we're getting spanked right now with how we've been treating the earth. Our relationships, and I want to posit this idea that we have a fractured relationship with death. We have a hard time understanding that there could be a way to communicate with people who have passed away. This is a very difficult thing to talk about in the land of science and hard data, right? But that's in our indigenous ancestry for many of us. That guidance can still be there, in fact, in a more powerful form. So in my opinion, our opportunity here is to look at our relationships with all these things, including spirit, including our own bodies, and there's both, right? Both and heal. We have the opportunity to gain from ancestral wisdom right now. With this mass amount of deaths, I don't believe that wiping out, like people just die and there's no energetic reverberation or connection. That is not in my line of thinking. You feel free to disagree. I'm not talking about religion or spirituality in any way, other than even like what is in your ancestral line, right? Like you, whatever you believe, however you want to interpret this or not. But I would like to offer that a way for us to heal is to understand that even though people die, that we can still be connected. Have you ever thought about someone and then they call? Have you ever had an intuition about somebody and then you find out something happened to them? That's the stuff I'm talking about. That's what has not been passed down to us, but it's in our fabric of our bodies. And the knowledge of this is key here for us to continue. Remembering. What is the word remember? A member is like a part. We're putting it back together. We are fragmented. We need to put ourselves back together and remember. So in that, of course, we have resilience. In that, of course, we can have, a connection and a foster a more healthy relationship with the earth, with others around us. So again, it's a shifting of perspective in gaining the self-power. How can we actively work towards healing our sense of self? It's connecting back to that. Like, we have the time now. We have the ability to pause for a moment. And it is a gift in a way. It's a gift for us to look at this stuff. The fact that I'm even having this conversation with you is only because of COVID-19. That's the only reason why I'm having this conversation with you. Do you think I would be brave enough to talk about this stuff when I'm doing all my organizational leadership discussions? Do you think that there's a regular sense of being able to talk about this? No. But it needs to be. And so we are all being prompted to look at this now. And so before we move into strategies, I'm going to pause here. because I think that this is some heavy, heavy thought. And I'm just wondering if there are any reactions or any questions that have. Let's bring it home with some strategies. So all this conversation is really paramount to understanding what to do next. So what are some strategies to move forward? And feel free to, again, grab something to write with, because what I'm going to do is list a bunch of them, and what we're going to do is some action planning right now, just around some ideas. Okay. So the first one is engage in self-care and healing. So please list one thing that is a self-care practice for you. What is one thing that you find healing? For me, I do this thing where I have a luxurious end of the day. What I do is I light a candle when I have a shower and I take my time. And for me, that's like my little moment of solitude. And that is enough for me for self-care. And I try to meditate in the morning. Maybe for you, it's going for a run. Maybe for you, it's journaling. So can you write down one thing that is an act of self-care for you and something that's healing? Doing makeup. I hear that. I posted on my Instagram yesterday. I had a webinar and I got fully decked out in a whole dress and everything. Even though you could only see half my body, but I was like, I want to feel good today. Thank you for that. Running and walking, listening to music. Yes, definitely. Cooking with the kids is great. Makeup, dancing. Yes. Anyone watching D Nice on Instagram right now? Club Quarantine. So good. Driving, swinging, swimming, cooking. Ooh, this is so great. Journaling, yes. These are all fantastic. Thank you. So keep going with that. And I want you to make a list for yourself of all the things we're going to talk about. Okay. The second one is understand and communicate your needs. So this is in terms of relationships. So this could be with your work, your partner, another family member, or your professors. And like, what is one thing you need right now that maybe you haven't asked for? Or one thing that was offered to you that you didn't take, which is number 4. But what is a need that you have? So for me, I need to be alone sometimes. And that's hard when, I've got everyone all over me because I got the kids and husband, but I need some time. We all need some time. So sometimes I say, look, I just need a minute, and I communicate that. So what is that for you? What is a need you have? Do you need some more time on your assignments right now? Like, do you need, like the example about meetings? Like, do you need to maybe come late? Do you need a hug? Yes. We have ditto on the hug, a lot of hugs, a lot of physical, yes, I miss the hugs. You need to be alone for like a week. Yeah. Well, can you, let's be creative about how that happens. Maybe you can start with a little bit of time and then expand, or put the headphones on and just indicate that it's your alone time. There's ways you could do it. Appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Number 3 is very, very important. Acknowledge and release your emotions. So how do you do that? Well, the key is to find a healthy way. And when we don't, what happens is it can bottle up inside. It can be a ticking time bomb, and we take it out on somebody that it wasn't even related to. Usually a person we care about and trust, because they will receive it, which is terrible and sad. So we need to find an acceptable way that's healthy to acknowledge and release your emotions. Do you have a punching bag? Do you have a journal? Do you like to maybe write on a piece of paper, tear it up, and then burn it, and then bury it? Crying is amazing. Honestly, crying as soon as you feel like crying is probably the best thing you can do. Like, don't hold the cry in. If you hold the cry in, it'll come out later. Try to cry when you feel like crying. Give yourself permission. Feels good. Yes. And then you sleep. Oh, so great. Thank you for sharing that. Writing, communicating, and crying. Crying is amazing. Writing is great. Writing how you feel is amazing because you can look back and have perspective on how you're feeling and validate yourself. Like that's how you felt. This is so great. And you cry at night, but then your eyes are swollen. I know. Like that day that I was upset and then I went for a walk, I had to come on a call and I think I pretended I didn't know it was video just so they wouldn't see my face. But we do what we got to do because it's hard. Thank you for sharing and for receiving my vulnerability too. Okay. So I also want to point out that especially for masculine presenting people, that society has taught masculine presenting people to not show emotions. And that's why it's even more so important to share it. My husband's really good friend was just like drinking in all the news every day and was being strong for his family and not showing emotion. And then one day he just got super sick. And it wasn't COVID, it was just this stress immune system. And he just tanked because he didn't have an outlet. He didn't give himself the permission to like be free with that. So try to do that also. Okay. 4 is accept offerings of help and support. Has someone offered you some help and you haven't accepted it? Or have you seen things that you maybe want to participate in, like a free yoga class or something, and you're like, maybe try to accept the offering, especially now healers are all on point. Everybody's ready to serve because this is the time to do it. So when you're aware of what's going on, whether it be like a spiritual gathering or a community gathering or a friend texting you, as long as it doesn't feel like work for you, take them up on whatever they're offering. So what is one example of accepting help? Okay. So think about that. Number 5, know your values and priorities. Woof. And along with this, a comma there is let go of what doesn't serve you anymore, because that's really what it is. When you choose a priority, you are automatically saying no to something else. Okay. And I want that to sink in, because the best self-care is the word no a lot of the time. Or it's like, I can't do that, no. Or even no reason, just no. Just no. There should be no reason. That's also, right? Disempowering. Just no. No. Because guess what you're saying? You're saying yes to the other thing. And focus on that. Okay. So what's your priority right now? Everyone write down what's your number 1 priority right now, in terms of what it is. Is it your physical health? Is it eating right? Is it calling your parents, right? Make sure they have groceries. Taking care of yourself. Yes, I see that. Self-care, your health, mental health for sure. Mental health is key. Mental health again. 100. That's so important. I was watching this CrossFit competition. It's very inspiring to see people like power through. But the ones who won, physically, they're all pretty much the same, like very strong people. But the ones who inched ahead or even were leaps and bounds ahead were the ones who were mentally stronger. It was fascinating. There was this one person who she was just not sure that she could do it, and she didn't do it. She was so strong, trained for 2 years. So the mental health is key. A friend offers to pick up my medications from the pharmacy or go pick up groceries. Very good. So you can receive that. Thank you. All right. Lastly, when you are ready, move in the direction. So everything we've shared, you don't need to do any of it tomorrow or the next day. You can just think about it and let it be. And so it is. Okay? It's just there for you at some point. It's a resource. But when you're ready, you have it. You've thought about it. Okay? So don't feel pressure to do anything. Be gentle with yourself. I know this is counter to a lot of what we're seeing or feeling, but take a moment. You can say, Farzana told me to. I was on that webinar and that person told me, well, yeah, you know, all of the having to do this stuff. No. And the thing about self-care, I was doing self-care wrong for a long time. I was like, I meditated today. I did this and this. It was a checklist. It became another to-do. It became more stressful. And then I wasn't enjoying it. And then I was trying to have gratitude. You see the cycle? I'm like, why don't I have gratitude for my self-care? I was angry. I'm like, I should be happy. Do you see? Like, it's like, that's not how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to like take that dessert, eat it, and enjoy it. That's the self-care. That's the revolution. That's it. Okay? It's not like I did this, I did that, I journal, I did gratitude, I did my meditation. It doesn't work like that. So when you're ready, move in that direction. And my last point that I want to share today is a metaphor that I hope will be helpful for you. It came to me as soon as I knew I was speaking to you. And feel free to keep sharing in the chat. Oh, sorry. I have resources to share first. So Instagram here, as I mentioned, these are my top Instagram things that I follow that have helped me personally. So feel free to take a picture of this and follow. Spirit Teacher, daily meditation for free every day at 11 a.m. Pacific, 12 o'clock Mountain. Every day for free, every single day. This is my personal spirit teacher I'm sharing with you. She's amazing. And feel free to give a donation or not. You can just come. Mr. Jewel Love Jr., he has Instagram every day at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. He does this segment called Winning Daily. 20 minutes. He gets you in there. He's like, how are you feeling? Check in. You know, what's the self-care thing that you're going to do today? What are your goals? Boom. By the 20 after the hour, you're good. Like every day I've been doing this. It's been so good. I really recommend it. Completely free. Black Temple. Oh, I love these sisters. So women of color owned yoga healing practice. They do journaling online with everyone and yoga classes. And it's all folks of color. Amazing. And by donation. So that's available to you. Sunflower Wellness Kids, every day at 9:30 at night, there's a wellness activity, 20 minutes. So you're going to learn about Qigong. They have facial yoga. So you can actually do that on your face and physical activities, all free. Okay, so that's for you. Please come to one of these things at some point. Highly recommend. Don't forget to shop to give back. So buy from small businesses. These two I follow, Mixed Up Clothing, multiracial owned company. They create masks and then they give back everyone that you buy. They match it. Dolke, multiracial owned woman of color. They do clothing and candles and they give back to women's funds. And there are many other businesses doing this. So focus on supporting businesses in the local economy with your dollars. Okay, really important. We can move businesses along by concerting our efforts there. Okay, so this is the metaphor I wanted to share. If there's anything you remember from today, it's this. We are in a moment right now where we began in what we thought was a race, and we were trying to go towards the finish line, but none of that matters. Right now, we're in the transition. We're in the handoff, where we're figuring out where we're going to go. And at this point, what's important is the transition. It's the handoff. So everything that happened before, I'm talking about, inequity and all that stuff, okay, that is in our past. That is in our past. This rat race that we're in to try to get somewhere, sure, that's in the future. But all of that has to really blur, and what's coming into focus right now is the idea of this transition. with our ancestors? What are we taking from our ancestors that we're going to pass on to the future? What are we remembering here? And so I leave you with this, okay, is that we are in a time of transition right now. We are in a time of change. So work on that handoff, not winning the race. Work on this moment of movement. Work on this moment of gathering ourselves to move into what the next moment is. That's what this is. This is not a moment in itself, by itself, and it's not unimportant. The drop of the baton here can make or break it. We're in that moment. So I'm going to end here. I want to thank all of you for joining today. I think we had some conversation in between here. So I'm happy about that. And I don't know how much time we have left, but again, I want to thank all of you for joining. Thank you so much to the CII group team for putting this together and having me, and for all of you being here.
Yay.